Something pretty cool about this episode. So, up until this point, all the episodes you've been listening to have been ones that I recorded before the podcast ever got launched. I recorded several episodes in advance so that I'd have a little bit of a backlog in case I ever missed a week or something like that. And so, even though I end every episode by asking you for your ideas based on the two random prompts I generate, I've never been able to hear any up to this point. And so now I finally get to do that, and this is in response to episode 1's prompts of follow and fear. I had asked you to make an NPC based on that idea, and I got one from Gino the Star Child. Gino writes, just finished the first episode, and while I'm struggling to flesh it out at all, follow and fear make me think of something/someone following either Emile or VY572. Not as some horror, but because this NPC is afraid of Emile/VY572 for some reason, and is being driven to keep them in its sight as the only way to prevent the feeling that they're sneaking up behind it. I'm picturing something fleshy and lanky, with large, forward-facing eyes half hiding around a corner. Possibly with Emile catching glimpses of movement a few times before he fully sees it for the first time. I just like the idea of the creeping, monster-like thing actually being more afraid of you than you are of it. And I completely agree, Gino. I think that's a really cool idea, a way to take follow and fear. Definitely nothing that I had in mind when I first said those prompts. I like it a lot, and I'm already thinking of ways that I can start incorporating it. Now, I'll tell you right now, it does not wind up appearing in this episode. I was not able to find a good natural fit for it, but I am on the lookout for a good place to drop this kind of idea, and just because we've heard from Gino doesn't mean that's the official word on follow and fear, so feel free to respond to that or any of the other prompts from other episodes, including this one. They always show up in the outro, and you can email your ideas to starforgedpod@gmail.com. But first, here's episode 5. Stranded in space on a ship crashing into the atmosphere of an unknown planet, Emile Spencer knew that the only way to survive would be by his own wits and guile. He vowed that somehow he would find and slay the titanic cosmic beast that put him in this predicament, VY572. With every installment, we follow Emile's explorations and discoveries on this journey of revenge against all odds. I'm Midnight Jester, and this is the Left Behind Starforged series. It's episode 5, and we're back after a bit of a hectic session for Emile last time. He had been looking around for safety from this furnace world, and managed to find a settlement that opened up its doors when he gave out an SOS sort of hail. He went inside to what seemed like an empty hangar and soon found that instead of being empty, there was a whole contingent of armed, trained kind of militia people that were waiting to just shoot him on sight. And even while he was trying to communicate with them, one was already up on the side cutting through the door, so he was up against a clock. The only thing he could think to do was gain some sort of leverage by making the escape pod's emergency self-destruct sequence tied to his own personal computer such that he could set it off on a remote trigger, and if anything happened to his person, it would go off if it stopped detecting his vital signs. He was able to use this in order to get them to back down enough to step down from killing him to just taking him prisoner. And while he was in prison, he ran into somebody that he had known in the past on the Reacher, an old co-worker that, well, they have a little bit of history. This co-worker, whose name is Shark, was being investigated for selling arms to some unknown faction, and Emile had exonerating evidence for him, but chose not to divulge it because giving access to his computer where he had these logs that would prove Shark's innocence, well, that just risked too much for Emile, who had his own clandestine operations going on the computer. We don't know a lot about what was going on there. What we do know is that when Emile saw Shark for the first time, he immediately lied to him, telling him that much as he wanted to offer up the exonerating evidence, somebody had already been on his computer and deleted it. Now, Emile, despite not being an especially talented liar, did actually succeed at convincing Shark of this. And they sat together and reminisced about old times and actually got off to a good start. But before they could get too far with any of that, guards came back in the room and hauled Emile off to be interrogated. And that is where we're going to pick up this time. But before we do, I want to begin with a little bit of a vignette, just like last time. Part of the begin a session move. So last time we did this, we got to see a little bit from the perspective of Sage, the leader of this operation down here. He was in kind of a tech room filled with people doing all sorts of different jobs. We saw Sage interacting with Ghost, who was on the radio. This time, I think Sage is overseeing a little bit of work from a new character. I'm gonna roll up a name for them. We're going to use the oracle that'll assign a call sign. Okay, looks like the call sign is Valkyrie. Now, Valkyrie, I see, is being this group's, like, tech specialist. She's kind of like the Emile of this group in that she knows her way around computer systems and is configuring this floating screen. Also, with a name like Valkyrie, I'm picturing, like, these long, thick gray braids that go all the way down her back. Now, Valkyrie is putting some finishing touches on this floating screen, testing out kind of like logging in, making sure that like she can type some stuff and text appears on it. Gives a thumbs up to Sage, who nods and then signs back to Valkyrie. I have another job for you. While the interrogation is going on, I need you to break into the escape pod's computer system. And Valkyrie immediately starts signing back, kind of really quickly, like going into technical details about how like she briefly took a look at and everything when he first got here, and like all of these different like layers of security and you know, techno-babble kind of stuff that I couldn't begin to perform right now. But it's just going on and on about like what's all there and how it's going to be so hard, and a lot of just trying to kind of get out of the work in a way. And Sage like grabs her hands and holds them in his to stop her from talking, sets them back down, and then signs, I don't care. Make it work, or we're all going to die. And that's just, that's the vignette that we're going to go with. We're going to go back to Emile now. Now, as a result of doing this vignette, I'm going to give myself +1 momentum, which does set Emile at a +9, which is a pretty good place to be in, which we're probably going to need because the situation is not exactly wonderful. But also, as a result of that vignette, one thing I'm going to do, as we're about to pick up during this interrogation, I want to put a tension clock on this scene. Because while Emile is taking his time and we're going to explore a little bit of how these negotiations go, in the background, Valkyrie is going to be in the hangar doing everything she can to crack into the system or otherwise disrupt this bomb that he's got. And so he's only got so much time. You know, she's an NPC. I'm not rolling for this or anything. It's just decided that after enough time, it's going to happen. You know, put enough resources towards it and she'll crack through Emile's security. Even though he had a strong hit to make it, she'll get through eventually. So let us indeed make that tension clock for this scene. We're going to call this Valkyrie breaches Emile's security. And I'm going to make this a 6-segment clock. And that's because Emile did set it up pretty well. He's got it well in hand. And when appropriate, when we need to pay the price, I'm going to tick that clock up. And when that clock finishes, Emile is no longer going to be able to actually detonate that bomb. And Valkyrie is going to find a way to communicate that back to Sage, probably via that same telescreen. She'll communicate it, and the jig is up, and who knows what happens from there. So, to set the actual scene rather than all of these anticipated consequences, Emile is once again blindfolded, being led with his hands manacled behind his back. They probably take him through various twists and turns to disorient him a little bit before plopping him down in a chair, removing his manacles and removing his blindfold. Emile, of course, rubs at his wrists a little bit to do the proper demonstration that everybody has to do when they've been manacled. To show like, they were tight on my wrists. But he's got all of his gear, and as he looks about, he sees a relatively featureless room, but it's hard to tell because it's very dark in here. The only lighting is coming from the same little floating screen we saw in the vignette is now in this room across a table from him, and it's casting a little bit of a blue light in the room. Emile can just barely tell that on the other side of that screen there are there are like silhouettes of figures in the room. He can't really see them very well because his eyes are because his eyes are adjusted for the screen, not the rest of the room. What he can see better, though, is Sage. Now, Emile and Sage have never seen each other face to face, and in fact, as a result of that, why don't we roll a first look on Sage? Because even in the vignettes, I kind of see it as like the camera has always only ever been over his shoulder. We don't really see him that well. Let's try and paint a little bit better of a picture. Now, I don't consider myself that great at like really visually describing characters. This is going to be a little bit of practice for me. But the Oracle gave me the first look for him of eccentric. So I think what's most eccentric about Sage is, despite that name implying, kind of a great calmness and wisdom, I think he's got the eccentricity we see is these tattoos all over his body that, like, they don't go together. Like, it's not like he's got full sleeves that are all part of like this grand tapestry. It's more like a whole bunch of individual people took turns tattooing him blindfolded, or not blindfolded in the sense that each individual one looks scraggly, but blindfolded in the sense that like none of them were looking at any of the other work. So it's more like they all chose what they're going to tattoo individually, and they like locked in on that answer, and then they all did it. So they're all up and down his arms and even along his neck and face, and just like none of it contributes to anything clear. And a lot of it is just kind of like cryptic looking text. But what's also interesting about it is it's all in the same handwriting. Like a lot of the written text, it has a handwriting, and it doesn't look like this was done by a bunch of different people. It looks like it was done by one person who just piecemeal didn't really know what to do with it. And various parts kind of overlap, and like it gets hard to read. It's just a mess. But he otherwise does indeed have like this very measured calm, especially right now as he is in this room. Now, another thing that Emile sees is the screen, in addition to giving a little bit of a blue glow to the room, the screen has on it some text right now, which says, "Rule, : do not speak out loud ever. Communicate only via screen." And there's a keyboard in here that's connected to the screen that there's one keyboard on each end of the table. One in front of Sage, one in front of Emile. And so Emile, he looks at the screen, he looks at the keyboard in front of him, and then he starts to chuckle a little bit. And Sage is immediately confused by this. That was not the response he was expecting. Like, everything that they have set up in this room is set to be kind of intimidating and put you off guard. But Emile starts chuckling, and Sage just kind of cocks his head a little bit in curiosity. And Emile says to him, out loud, "You seem to be under the impression that you're the one with leverage here. That you're the one who gets to make rules right now. Do you think I'm scared by any of this stuff? By the men creeping around in the back that are clearly armed? You think this is intimidating and you get to set the tone of this interrogation? No. I've accepted your invitation to this room, and that's how you should start viewing it. Because let me remind you, if any of those armed guards back there start getting any funny feelings and decide that they want to shoot me, immediately the bomb in the hangar is going to go off. It's going to blow open those doors, and you're going to have a real problem on your hands. So let's not pretend here at flexing muscles and trying to make an intimidating show. I set the rules, and you don't have to talk if you don't want to. You can use this little screen, but I'm going to do what I like. And here's my rule. My rule is we're going to start de-escalating this situation, okay? For all I just said, I truly don't want to use that bomb. I don't. I really don't want it to go that way. I'm willing to. If I'm a cornered rat, I'm completely willing to. I will take you down with me, but I don't want it to be on the table. It's adding tension that we don't need. I want to de-escalate this. But right now, everything you're doing,
Everything you're displaying with all these people around the room, the way you've been treating me since the moment I came here, nothing is giving me any reason to de-escalate this situation. So if you want that bomb to not be a factor, you need to give me a reason. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to start with you telling me exactly what your problem is with me, why you've been trying to kill me from the moment I got here. And if I like that answer well enough, then I will reciprocate with information about who I am and why I'm here, and we can start a dialogue. How does that sound? And I know it's been a quiet place where nobody talks to begin with, but the silence gets all the more palpable as everybody is just stunned by that reaction. Clearly, everybody in here was like not looking at Emile to have that kind of, brass behind him. And the dice will tell us a little bit about how well it worked. But I'm actually going to treat this not as a face danger or a compel or anything like that. We're actually going to do this as secure an advantage. Because the real thing Emile is trying to do right now, in addition to like putting on all of this bluster and performance and kind of paper over a little bit of the reality of how intimidated he might actually be, he's trying to convince himself that he has no reason to be intimidated, but he's also very carefully monitoring everything Sage and the other people in the room do. He's looking for body language, little expressions. He's really analyzing and seeing, how does Sage react to all of the things I'm saying, and what could I learn about these people and their situation as a result? And the reason I'm doing this as secure an advantage as opposed to doing this perhaps as a gather information based on just kind of reading expressions is because we're indeed doing this as a scene challenge. I will freely admit that other clocks that we've done in the past have perhaps not been 100% by the rules. I got an opportunity to read into it a little bit more today, and I'm trying to be a little bit closer to the intent of how they're supposed to work. And for a scene challenge like this, I really am just supposed to be using face danger and secure an advantage, and let this be a little bit more of a short order thing. So we're doing this one as secure an advantage with wits. Okay. He gets a weak hit, and not one I can make any better by burning momentum. So I have an option here. I can either take +2 momentum because I am successful at the goal of learning a little bit about their situation. Specifically, the moment that Emile is going to focus on is how they reacted when Emile started talking about the reason why they started trying to kill him as soon as he got here. So I can either take +2 momentum, which I actually couldn't because I'm already at 9, or I can get +1 on my next move, not a progress move. And so I'm going to go for the +1, because the thing that Emile notices is that there's a bit of a look to the the first thing he notices is, of course, just how, like, Emile recognizes that he was breaking the rules by speaking out loud, that he wasn't supposed to do that. What he wasn't necessarily expecting was that he sees a look of intimidation from Sage and the other people in the room once he starts doing that. They don't look, aghast like, oh my god, you broke some taboo. They look afraid. And Emile picks up on that, and he's going to use that to his advantage next time he speaks. In the meantime, though, he did ask Sage a question, and Sage takes a moment to consider how he's going to react to this brazen move by Emile, but does ultimately, he grabs the keyboard and he starts typing. And the answer he gives is not, it's a little terse. It's not exactly as full of detail as Emile was hoping for. He basically just says, "You're where you don't belong. You're invading our home, and we're defending ourselves." And Emile does not like that answer at all. He gives this exasperated performative sigh of just, that's not a productive way to keep going. That is not a productive start to this dialogue. What do you expect me to say to that? How are we supposed to continue from there? The thing about that answer is, it's a lie. And I'll tell you why I know that. If you were so concerned about me being around here and that I was trespassing, why would you open your doors to let me in? Inviting danger into your very home by doing that. And of course you have. Need I remind you, there's a bomb at your doorstep right now as a result of having done that. I could have been off on my merry way. I could have assumed that nobody was around to respond to my hail anymore, but no. No, you responded by opening up the doors and you let me in just so that you could kill me. And that tells me that I had already violated some kind of rule. I had already set you towards killing me before I even got there. And you know what I think? And it's written all over your face right now, with every moment that you react to me even speaking right now. The thing I was doing that had already put you off against me, I was communicating. I was on the radio shouting. Now, I don't think this is just some weird religious thing or something like that. No, no, no. I think when you say that you were defending yourselves, when you were protecting your home, come to think of it, you're not lying. You weren't protecting your home from my presence. You were protecting your home from me signaling. You're afraid of being listened to, aren't you? And now I am going to make this as a face danger move with... This is once again wits, because I think the root of this all is Emile's, putting all the pieces together, getting a read on the way these people are reacting, and the intended result of this is getting Sage to divulge a little bit more and be specific about why he doesn't want Emile to talk. In fact, Emile, to add on to this, perhaps, Emile will finish that off by saying, just tell me the truth, and I'll use the keyboard. Tell me why I shouldn't be talking, and I'll stop. And we're going to see if it works. He, of course, has the +1 from having read the situation a little bit better. And let's see what happens. Base danger, add +1, wits. There we are. There's a strong hit. You're successful and you mark progress. Now, I don't have a specific progress track that I'm working on for this, but I certainly don't tick up the clock, thankfully. So the success on that is that Sage indeed takes the keyboard and, as soon as Emile gives that in for, I'll stop talking out loud if you just tell me, Sage takes the keyboard and starts quickly typing out. There's so many typos and stuff. He's so, frantic and, hopeful that this will shut Emile up. Yes, you're right about everything. I'll explain. Just stop talking. It's, riddled with typos. And Emile sits back and stops talking and waits. And now Sage more carefully starts typing out, we're being listened to at all times. You want open dialogue and the ability to de-escalate this situation. I offer it to you with open honesty now. We're prisoners on the run, and I'm more afraid of you being overheard than your bomb. Everything you said was right. We needed to shut you up. Your comms could have been picked up by the Imperium. They may well have been, and will need to be ready. But moreover, your talking now could also be heard. And Emile is very perplexed by that and asks, how? Just very simply, just types that in. And I think Emile chooses to, he could use the keyboard in front of him, but instead, as kind of a flex, he's already, while he was listening, connected wirelessly to this display via his own personal system, and just starts using his own haptics to type in with the little gestures and stuff, and it shows up on screen. And so he just puts simply, how? And Sage starts typing in, they do a lot of things to keep their eye on top prisoners. Those who go for the vaults. Subdermal things. They listen in on us while we're in the prisons to make sure we're not up to anything. And while we made our break, they are no doubt looking for us. And their ears are still open. We can't shed their microphones. Everything you say could be getting picked up by them and going to them. We don't want to give them anything to use. And Emile ponders on that for a moment. That sounds rough. But he's very happy to hear that Like, that is actually reaching out and trying to help. Like, he's very happy to hear the honesty there because that's something they can work with and he can maybe start de-escalating a little bit. And so he does indeed respond. I assume you've come a long way to show up at a place like this. You really think it would transmit that far? And Sage responds simply with kind of like a look on his face like he wants to give a sigh of just, it's a risk I can't take. It cost us too much to get here, and we're not ready. And Emile responds to him, it sounds like there's a lot of problems that you need help with. And I'm a capable person, I've gotten this far. If we help each other, we can stop threatening each other. You say you're not ready yet. What would get you ready? How can you be prepared against the Imperium? Sage thinks for a moment on that, and then begins to type into the keyboard, there may be a way. Tell me, how did you find us? And Emile tells him about how he was able to pick up the electrical activity on scans and like what he was looking for when he was looking for any kind of shelter. Sage nods and types in, it's as I feared. A simple planetary scan, even from orbit, would probably reveal the same thing with the types of ships they'd be sending at us. Anything high-powered enough to be searching for us across galaxies, it could pick us up. We may never be able to stop somebody from finding it as if they're on planet like you were, but we need to cloak ourselves. And Emile just types in, so how can you do that? And Sage responds, we have a method, I think. The problem is we have no way to power it. We need a shield to cloak that kind of scanning. The people on this planet, we're all plenty capable. We've been working on such a design. The problem is it takes a tremendous amount of power. And there's only one place that we can think of to get it. So Emile simply replies, so tell me. If I can't give you something that I can do for you, this momentary peace we have is not going to last. And we're going to be right back to threatening each other again. Sage nods, sagely, and goes, the ship we came on was hijacked from the Imperium. It's capable of crossing galaxies. It would certainly have the power for the device that we're trying to concoct. Emile says, great. I'm a pretty handy guy. I could certainly help you scavenge out the... I could certainly help you salvage out whatever parts are necessary from the inside, and we could rig something up, I'm sure of it. I'm a crafty dude. We can make this work. And Sage shakes his head and goes, that's not the problem. We have plenty of people who know what they're looking for and can salvage. That's not what makes you special. And Emile types, okay, so what's the problem then? Why haven't you done it? And Sage says, the ship has an AI on board. The AI is powered by this. The AI's very life is dependent on those power cores not going anywhere, and it knows it. Anytime that we've come in there to try and salvage it, it uses all of its control of the ship to thwart us, to lock us out. It even uses internal defenses to fight against us. Many have already been injured trying. So if you want to do something for us, find a way to take out that AI. Unlike us, your face won't be registered within its database, so it may not just immediately distrust you like it does us. Besides, you seem to know your way into computer systems. Get the AI to back down, shut it down, I don't care how you do it. Get us the ability to get at that power core, and maybe you'll be useful enough to keep alive. So Emile is indeed going to swear a vow, I believe, at this moment, because this seems important enough that, and he would want to punctuate. Emile wants to punctuate how serious this is to him because he doesn't want to ruin this, that they've got kind of a relative peace at the moment. Emile's going to swear it as a vow, which is now kind of like a sub-vow of his, I will not die on Cinder, I'm going to find a way off this hellhole. I think the completion of this vow will definitely help tick up the other one, but this one it needs its own importance. So with Swear an Iron Vow, write your vow and give it a rank, then roll plus heart. So Emile vows, I will get you access to the ship's power core. And we're going to put that as just a dangerous one. I think particularly with it being a kind of sub-vow of his I will not die on Cinder, I don't want it alone to take up too much time. I'm actually just going to make this vow troublesome, partly because it is like a sub-vow of the main one about not dying on Cinder. I want this to be a step along the way and not take too much time on its own, but Emile is going to swear to do it. So now we need to roll heart to see how this starts. Okay, it's a weak hit that I could turn into a strong hit. On a weak hit, you are determined, but begin your quest with more questions than answers. Take +1 momentum and envision what you do to find a path forward. I think I'm fine with that. I don't need to burn momentum to make it a strong hit. I'll just go all the way up to 10 momentum. I have more questions than answers, largely just because Emile knows that in this world, AI can mean a lot of different things. They range in power. Now, it sounds like this one is definitely very at home on the ship, which he also doesn't know anything about. He knows that some are easily thwarted by just kind of like logic problems. Some can, just be crashed like that. Some are a lot more on the level of just like a thinking human being. And he's not sure what he's dealing with. And he definitely doesn't know what's awaiting him on this ship itself. So a lot of questions. But the reason he's emboldened is because he knows that his attempts to kind of change this situation in order to get out of it have been largely successful. It sounds like there's a path forward to be able to not be threatening each other all the time. So he swears this vow to Sage. And it occurs to me that we've never had to mark a single bit of progress on Valkyrie breaching into Emile's security. I think if there were a progress track that we were trying to fill before that happened, it basically did. Valkyrie may well keep trying to do that in the background, but because we've kind of reached this level of peace at the moment, it no longer matters. And we're not going to focus on whether or not Valkyrie does. Maybe we'll roll an oracle to see if she was successful in time. So I'm just going to remove that. I did not expect it to go as smoothly for Emile. I know that I kind of leaned into it a little bit by making wits moves that helped me out, but I thought for sure the dice were not going to be friendly and Emile's going to have to dig his way out, and, well, here we are. So with that agreed to, Sage nods, and while I'm not going to go beat by beat through this, like, they share the relevant information as far as, like, where the ship is, how to get to it, and all of that. Now, the ship itself is actually outside. It's too big to fit in the hangar, so it's just, like, on top of the mesa itself. So Emile is going to have to get there. But I think because this is just a troublesome vow, they have, like, a skiff or something. Somebody will take him there, so that's not part of it. It really is just about what happens inside. So Emile gets on this skiff with these people who are dressed up with these, long coats to protect them from the ash in the air. Everybody's got goggles on. They're covering up as much as possible, scarves. Even though it's tremendously hot out here, it's just the environment is too caustic and they need to protect their skin as best as they can. They've all got rebreathers in. Emile certainly has his in, and he's doing what he can. Like, he's got some, like, borrowed similar kinds of, like, long coats and scarves and stuff, like, as much to cover himself up as he can. And they take him on this skiff over around a ways a little bit to this path that gets towards the top of the mesa, and they drop him off there. And when Emile is getting off, they drop him off at the foot of this utterly gigantic ship. It's not as big as the Reacher was. This is probably much closer to the scale of, like, if I had started this game with a starship the way you're supposed to just kind of go from galaxy to galaxy, much more on that scale. A small crew could pilot it. In fact, in a pinch, one person probably could. It would be a little bit complicated, but one person could handle it, but there's enough room to cram more people inside if necessary, either travelers or other crew members, who knows. And so Emile approaches this ship. Emile's every step is just being buffeted by the winds and the ash in the air. He's got his arm up, just doing what he can to make progress. And as Emile gets closer to the ship, he sees that where the bulkhead should be it's an open hole. The bulkhead itself is on the ground, being cut like Emile kind of like kicks it as he almost stumbles over it. It's covered in ash right now, and in fact, there's a little bit of ash on the inside of the ship as it's been blown around. The side of it has been cut open. Emile immediately recognizes, clearly with the same kind of handiwork as whatever person was trying to cut his way into the escape pod when he was inside the hangar. They cut their way in. Emile's guess is that they were probably this must have been what Emile's guess is this must have been one of the previous attempts to get in at the power core. And Emile, it's up off the ground. Like ordinarily there'd be a ramp to get in there, but the ramp is certainly not extended. It's all dark inside. And Emile jumps up and grabs the lip and pulls himself in. If he were under pressure, I'd make him make an iron move, but there's no need to do that. It's just he's a little bit awkward at it, but he's able to pull himself inside the ship. And clicks on a little bit of a flashlight that can probably emanate from his belt pouch, where his computer actually is. It's got like a little bit of it's got a bright flashlight on it that just emanates from his hip, and it's illuminating what's in front of him. And it's derelict open hallways. It's dark in there, and before he can do much of anything, a voice comes on via a communication system. And it's a very smooth, measured voice that introduces itself and says, "I am Tetrahedron. You are not in my manifest. Introduce yourself." So Emile just says out loud, "Can you hear me?" And Tetrahedron replies, "I hear all within my walls. I repeat my inquiry. Who are you? What has brought you aboard?" And Emile's forthcoming as he's walking down the hallway. He walks and talks a little bit and just starts saying "Well, my name is Emile Spencer." And before he can get a full thought out, Tetrahedron just comes back over the intercom and just goes, "Halt. You have been given permission to introduce yourself, but not to step further into this ship." And Emile stops and puts his hands up and goes, Hey, okay. Didn't mean to intrude. Well, other than perhaps literally. My name is Emile Spencer, and I'm an explorer. Unfortunately, my explorations have sent me a little bit tumbling away, and I found myself on this very hostile planet, looking for shelter. This ship seems to be exactly what I'm looking for right now. And while Emile is doing this, he's trying to conceal that he's in the middle of trying to connect to any kind of computer system on here wirelessly, anything that's in short range. He's trying to just log on to the network. Now he knows that could be very troublesome, that's very much going into the AI's home. But he thinks that's the best shot that he has on here, is just, at least if anything goes wrong, he could presumably dive back out before the ship's able to really do anything with the security system. So let's see whether or not he's successful at that. Thankfully, this is very much within the confines of the tech asset. He is making an attempt to hack an electronic system. So we're going to get to add a +1 on this. It's yet again a wits move with a +1. So let us face danger. Because the challenge is very much that if the AI doesn't like this, he could do some bad stuff. Especially because if Emile is bridging the connection between his node and the ship's node, the AI might start being able to do stuff directly back to Emile. So let's see how this goes. Okay, we have a weak hit. You succeed but not without a cost. Make a suffer move. So the question is whether or not I do want to burn momentum to make this into a strong hit. And eventually I'm going to make use of this momentum, but I'm still not sure this is the moment. I think I'm good to succeed, but with a bit of a cost. So what is the cost here? Oh, okay. I think the cost is, because I love these tension clocks so much, and I feel like I didn't get to properly do the one from before. Emile is successful at getting in there. However, the AI definitely immediately clocks that there's a new log on. Of course it would. Tetrahedron is well aware of a new connection to its network. There'd basically be no way to conceal that. And as we were saying, that connection goes both ways. I'm going to make a 4-part tension clock that is already filled in 1 part as a result of that suffer move. We're going to add this tension clock to the vow about getting access to the ship's power core. It's going to have 1/4 of it already filled in as a result of paying the price. Now, in addition, I am going to mark progress on getting access to the ship's power core because this is definitely progress towards shutting down the AI. Emile is inside, but they're now they're hacking each other. And it's, lightning fast. The AI immediately clocks what Emile is doing and says, "Do you really think that over the loudspeaker, do you really think you're going to win in my domain? Foolish human, to do such a thing that's so integrated with yourself." Oh, no. Okay, here's what it is. So Tetrahedron accesses his system immediately. It logs in across this network bridge that Emile made, and scanning all of what's going on his personal system, it immediately sees the connection between Emile's computer and the remote detonation of the escape pod inside. It sees that Emile has set up this bomb, and the clock is when it's going to do what Valkyrie was trying to do, except in reverse. Valkyrie was trying to get in to shut down the bomb. And in fact, somewhere we see Valkyrie's eyes light up as it's just like, what is this activity going on? Because now Tetrahedron is going to try and explode that ship. And it indeed immediately responds to Emile and says, "You clearly do have another ship. I see it on your network, along with a wonderful little bomb set on a remote trigger. Perhaps I should make what you said true. Give you no ship to call home by exploding that little bomb you put on there." Emile knows now that he needs to be able to shut this AI down before it's successful. And so now it's a race against the clock. So Emile starts scrambling. He's on the network, and he starts desperately trying to pull up a map so that he can find out, okay, where is this AI housed? How can I get at it so that I can just shut it all down? I need to physically be able to yank this away, because that'll be way faster than trying to, beat a computer that's going to definitely be able to split its attention between both hacking his system and blowing up the ship and being able to defend against Emile's probing. So all Emile's going to try and do is try and get a map on board so he can get to the physical location of where the hardware is stored. We're going to do that as secure and advantage. This is going to be with edge, even though in theory this is expertise, focus, and observation. Because he needs to do this so quickly, I'm going to make him do it with edge. However, he is still working on hacking a computer system to get these files as quickly as he can, so I am still going to give him the +1 from his tech asset. It's just he's going to have to do it with edge. Speed is too much of the essence. Alright, he gets a weak hit, but this one I couldn't improve with momentum, because I rolled a 10 on one of the challenge dice. So I can't take +2 momentum, so I have 2 options, but really only one. I could take +2 momentum, but my momentum is already maxed out, so next. Or I could add +1 on my next move. So, indeed, Emile is able to get these maps, and he's ready to race there as quickly as possible. He gets it relatively quickly, and just like before, he's got it on his holographic display set up to just Google Maps give him arrows for where to go. There's breadcrumbs ahead of him like he's playing a video game that just show, take this path in order to get there. And so now it's a face danger move with edge, because again, it's all about his speed. He knows, even as good of a hacker as he is, he's not fast enough to beat an AI in the digital world. And in fact, during this time, turrets are indeed starting to come down from the ceiling. They're locking in on his position to try and just start shooting at him. He needs to just run there and dodge as best as possible. They're a little bit slow because the AI is indeed doing multiple fronts. So they're not locking on his position as best as they're not locking in on his position as well as they might have otherwise. So they're kind of more firing randomly. Tetrahedron basically does the simple approach to ship security. it doesn't have the computing power to like lock in on Emile's position and actually aim. It just lowers like every turret in the ship and has it just start firing on automatic while like arcing around and hoping that it'll catch Emile. And so just lasers are going off everywhere. They're bouncing off of walls and stuff. Emile is going to just have to dodge as best as possible to avoid this gunfire and be able to just rip this housing out as quickly as he can. Let's see what happens. Thankfully, he has a +1 due to this map. Strong hit. All right, so Emile definitely just they're pinging off his feet, or pinging around his feet. He's like high stepping, getting around them, sliding around corners, dodging. Like he's able to see, because the good thing about the way these turrets are firing is they're on a pattern. They're just blindly rotating, so he's able to kind of just use timing and rush through, pausing when needed to let them pass, and then sneaking behind them. Like, it's not like they're covering every square inch and he's just like dodging a laser grid. It's not like he's dodging a laser maze to get through here. He's just knowing where to step and avoiding it, and like it adds a little bit of a challenge to this all, but it's nothing that he can't keep track of. And so I get to mark progress as Emile indeed reaches the area that has the housing of the AI, and he just needs to find a way to disrupt it in time. Because it's pretty locked down, and Tetrahedron, seeing that he's there, I think part of the reason why it doesn't make additional progress on hacking into Emile's control over the bomb in the hangar is that it starts devoting more attention to aiming the turrets. It devotes more of its computing power on just aiming these turrets, because clearly the blind firing is not working well enough. And it figures it needs to treat Emile the same way as anything else. Now, little does Tetrahedron know if it kills Emile, that'll actually set off the bomb as well. It is not dug through the code enough to recognize that that's what would happen, but it wants to kill him anyway. So it starts focusing its lasers in on Emile's position, and Emile decides he's going to use that to his advantage. He's going to let that happen and basically let the AI destroy itself. He's going to try and dodge out of the way at the last moment and let the lasers destroy its own housing. Can he indeed get the AI? Can he wait long enough to do this without getting himself blasted? Can he pull this off? One last face danger with edge, or one more face danger with edge for this sort of thing, absolutely. And this is what I've been saving my momentum for. And indeed, this is the moment. It's a weak hit, but if I burn momentum, I could make this a strong hit. I absolutely want to do that because I want this to end on just that incredible visual. So I burn my momentum, I make this a strong hit, I'm successful, and I mark progress, which puts us up to 9 out of 10 progress. And the AI, it's exactly as described. Emile, at the last moment, dives out of the way. The AI's laser, the laser turrets blast where Emile was, and like an automatic fire just blast away at the AI's housing. It just digs through into the core, and like it's not immediately destroyed, but it's doing the full-on 2001: A Space Odyssey thing, the daisy, like it has clearly crippled itself right now. And let's fulfill that vow. Let's fulfill that vow to see if this was enough, or are we in for a surprise? Okay, as expected, a strong hit. I was worried that out of nowhere we were going to get like a double 10 complication and suddenly the AI would come back to life having faked it and just immediately blown up the ship and it all would have gotten worse, but it's not what happened. We indeed are successful. We'll get to put 1 tick on the quest legacy track. And what this represents is that Emile indeed is able to like take a rest, like the turrets stop firing. The AI is... It's too crippled to be able to stop it. It's like slowly shutting down as it's just erroring out slowly. Emile is like slumps on the side, catching his breath. It was too close for comfort, but he made it through. And he, more at his leisure, gets onto a console and just like starts using the direct touch commands to tell it to open up the bay that has the power core inside of it. He's able to, at his leisure, just get things opened up and demonstrate to them that there's no problem anymore. He'll be able to go back to Sage and show, like, the way is open, the AI is disabled, you can have at your power core. But as far as what happens after that and how they continue this relationship, Well, that's going to be a question for next time. Alright, I hope you don't mind the background music because you're going to be hearing a lot of it. This one's going to go on for a little while, so here goes the outro. Look, you're 5 episodes in. You've heard me talk about liking and subscribing plenty at this point. Odds are decent. Maybe you've subscribed already anyway. So, I've got a new request for those of you who want to really go the extra mile and support this show. Why don't you give this show a rating? When you rate this show, make an action roll with plus the number of stars you rated. So if you rate 5 stars, you get to roll a d6 plus 5, and, well, hopefully you wouldn't rate anything else, so I don't have to give any other examples. On a strong hit, fill in 1 full box on your Bond's legacy tract as you've developed our Bond. You can do this directly to whatever character you're currently playing, and don't worry, it's all completely by the rules. I asked Sean, and he said it was cool. Now, granted, this wasn't Sean Tompkin, just a different Sean I happen to know who doesn't even spell his name the same way, but, well, on a weak hit, something prevents us from being full friends. Imagine what this is. Comment it on this episode. Then, take +1 on your next move. Again, Sean says it's fine. Now on a miss, take the burden Tormented. In order to clear it, write a review of this podcast. Now you don't have to make the action roll just because you left a rating, but the rules are if you do make the roll, you gotta abide by the results, good or bad. Let me know what happens. And then, when you're done with all that, I've got the usual prompts waiting for you. So I decided ahead of time this one would be generating a holiday, and then I rolled these 2 random prompts, and they seem to be pretty holiday-oriented in my mind. The prompts are begin and trade. So yeah, go ahead and make a holiday with those ideas and shoot it over to me at starforgepod@gmail.com. I'd love to see what you come up with, particularly if you can be surprising to me and not just like, oh, it's the day where they begin trade. There we go, the trading season begins. Please, I want to see what kind of surprises you have on that one. And of course, as usual, I just want to hear anything you have to say when you email me. So again, starforgepod@gmail.com. I'd be happy to see whatever feedback or whatever you have, questions, just saying hey, all that usual stuff. Also, and this is just a minor thing, if you're like me, you may have noticed that these episode lengths have been getting shorter and shorter. This is not intentional. I do intend for every play session to be about the amount to make a 1-hour podcast. This one definitely came in a little bit short overall, which is funny because I actually went in really specifically trying to make sure it was long enough, but this one just turned out to have a lot of editing after the fact and it lost a lot of time. So hopefully next week we'll be back to a little bit more like a full 1-hour episode of like main game content. We'll see. And by now you're probably getting pretty tired of hearing that music loop, so I'm just going to say, play me out, music.